Well, the American film-going audiences have become accustomed to seeing a blooper reel during the credits, but the latest from Disney is not what anyone expected. I'm Scott Ott with Stephen Green and Bill Whittle. This episode of Right Angle is brought to you by the members at BillWhittle.com. Gentlemen, I refer to the credits of the latest Disney action film, Mulan, which is basically a real-life or human being-made version of their previous animated classic, just without any of the fun or delight. And Disney, in the course of their credits, thanks, and this is according to Washington Post writer Isaac Stone Fish, great name, by the way, Disney is thanking 4 Chinese Communist Party propaganda departments in the region of Xinjiang, as well as the Public Security Bureau of the city of Turpan in the same region. These are organizations, we're told, who are fomenting and facilitating crimes against humanity, concentration camps, forced sterilization campaigns, targeting the Uyghur Muslim people. Bill Whittle, you live right there at the gates of Mordor, right down the street from Hollywood. Is it possible that companies that are getting so much funding these days from China and elsewhere just need to play ball with Chinese authorities if we're ever going to really see decent movies?
Well, we stopped seeing decent movies a long time before China became the overlords of the wretched hive of scum and villainy just behind the orange wall there. First of all, I'm much more worried about Chinese money influencing politicians than I am about filmmakers. Nobody expects Hollywood to make any good movies anymore, and this one's not a surprise. But here's what I do find interesting about this. I didn't see the new version. I won't, needless to say. But I did read a review that compared it to the musical version. First of all, there's no songs because this is a very serious movie, very dark movie. But basically what happened that I think is interesting is that in the original, Mulan is a female warrior, and she feels she needs to go and join the army because somebody from every household has to be summoned, and her father's very old, so she goes and takes his place. And she's just a peasant girl, and she has to learn how to fight, and she has to learn how to do all these things. She suffers setbacks. She has an instructor in the form of a friend, and on and on and on. Typical kind of things you would do with the journey of the hero kind of story. But in the live action Mulan, none of that happens. In the very first scene, as I understand it, she simply flies through the air and kicks the living daylights out of the first villain to show up because she's able to master her chi. And since she can master her chi, she's an invulnerable, invincible Mary Sue warrior who simply does nothing but never fail and go through the movie kicking everybody's butt. The end. Now, this kind of character, as I said, is called a Mary Sue, and they don't have any faults. And I've been a screenwriter pretty much all my life, and I wrote movies like that too, where the character that I wanted to be the hero, since they're my heroes, they never do anything wrong. They never have any setbacks. They never have any flaws. Everything they do it's wish fulfillment. But what it really comes down to, Scott, is it comes down to a sense of it's an inferiority complex on the part of the writer. And we saw this with the same kind of treatment of Mary Sue's, like in The Last Jedi, where Rey is this character that never loses all the powers in the beginning, better at flying than Han Solo, better at lightsaber duels than Luke Skywalker or Kylo Ren, better. And it's written by feminists. And they have such an inferiority complex that the idea that character may have to learn something, especially from a man, is just revolting to them. Of course they don't have to learn anything. They are Superwoman. What the new Mulan is, Scott, is it is the attempt on the part of the Chinese government to buy their way into the American pop culture with a Chinese superhero, because that's what she is. She is not a person who's worked her way up to become a warrior. She is a Marvel superhero who flies through the air and is invincible and all the rest of it.
So you're saying Disney did this with that character in order to ingratiate itself with China?
I'm saying that China put up the money to have this movie made. And once they put up the money to have this movie made, these were the conditions that they wanted the movie made on. And this is not at all uncommon. A lot of, during the Gulf War, a huge number of anti-war, not Gulf War, the Iraq War, huge number of those anti-war films that came out early were paid for by, the Arabs, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, all of this stuff. Hollywood is a whore, and there's a joke about a guy who is new in town, and he's basically says he's in Hollywood and he's in a limousine. He just says, "Hey, go over into that bar over there, that nice fancy looking bar, and go and get a couple whores and bring them back." And 3 minutes later, the guy comes back with 2 Hollywood screenwriters. So there you go. But it's not working. The movie is just a complete catastrophe and a flop because it's badly told, and because the influence of the Chinese government in it is so heavy-handed. That's the thing about these totalitarian regimes, since they never have to appeal to the people, since they basically just tell them what to do. They never learn anything about subtlety, finesse, or anything. They went in there and made this Chinese propaganda film, and everybody looked at the trailers and said, "This looks like Chinese propaganda film to me. I don't think I'll go see it." And so they didn't. But as long as the money's on the table, Scott, if you put money on the table in this business, you will get any movie made that you want, period.
Stephen Green, a number of years ago, back in, I think it was 1997, Disney released a movie, Kundun, that was glorifying the Dalai Lama. This ticked off Beijing, the Chinese government there, and for a while, Disney had to live under severe restrictions as to their ability to do their business in China. They worked very hard to try to find their way back into Beijing's good graces. At one point, the CEO of Disney, Michael Eisner, told Premier Zhu Rongji back in 1998, "We made a stupid mistake in releasing Kundun. Here I want to apologize. And in the future, we should prevent this sort of thing, which insults our friends, from happening." And then, of course, by and by, they opened Disney Shanghai, Disneyland, in 2016. Steve, if any brand holds that kind of patina of Americana, it is Disney. Is it possible that this is the final straw for the American people and they'll realize that Disney is not what Papa Walt designed so many decades ago?
Yeah, it's not just Disney, Scott. It's pretty much anybody in what I've come to call the infotainment industry that does business in China. We don't have a news industry in this country anymore, really. It's all people shouting at one another. And our movies, as Mulan indicates, but as others have, for example, that horrible remake of Red Dawn, where they had to make the bad guys North Koreans occupying Seattle or whatever it was.
I was going to say that they had to go back and redo the CGI. Yeah. They'd finished the movie with China as the villain, and then they had to go back and paper over everything and redo all of the CGI so that it's North Korea that invades America.
Yeah, just absolutely horrible. In the meantime, there's only one Red Dawn. It was made in 1984, and Wolverines. All right, enough of that. We made a big mistake. The hope was that as China liberalized economically, that it would liberalize politically, that as they imported all these American dollars, they would also import some ideas about liberty and freedom. Instead, what China is doing is using all those dollars that, many of which they've gotten through outright intellectual theft, to export tyranny. And they do it by affecting control or maybe not to the level of coercion, but threats and bribes and all the rest to get our giant media companies to comply with the Communist Party line. And that, to me, is simply intolerable. Decoupling has been the buzzword for the last couple of years in dealing with China, and it simply has to be done. We can't keep subsidizing those who would destroy our way of life. They can be as communist and brutal as they want. I'm not interested in regime change or anything like that. But this idea that they can use our money to export tyranny is absolutely intolerable. The Chinese chip maker right now, the big one, I can't remember the name of it, is in a fuss because they're afraid that new restrictions are going to stop them from continuing to steal our chip making technology and Taiwan's as well, for that matter. We're in a bad situation. That said, I want to talk just a little less seriously for a moment. I'm a big lover of bad movies. I mean, I love movies, period. My personal library is, it's getting up to about 3,000 movies now. But I have an entire section called drive-in and slasher movies. I have another entire genre called exploitation and schlock. I really dig some bad movies. If you've got something with a name like Death Race 2000, the original with John Carradine, not the stupid remake, or Forbidden World, or Bride of Reanimator, or Humanoids from the Deep, or The Thing with Two Heads, or Twins of Evil, any of these movies, I'm going to sit there and I'm going to watch them, and I'm going to love, I'm going to relish in the badness and enjoy it. I'm not going to see Mulan. I like a bad movie. I don't like a poorly done movie.
Hey, Scotty, can I just add one thing? Because you were talking about how the Disney image has changed from Uncle Walt and the wonderful world of Disney that we all grew up with and Disneyland and so on. Walt, when he started out here, he had a studio in Burbank, and there was no air conditioning in the summer, and it was 100 degrees plus. And he would be in screening rooms with his animators every day, going over every single one of the drawings and trying to get the best out of people. But for 30 years now, at least 30 years, maybe longer, the people that work in show business refer to the two studios that Disney has up here in the valley. They call one of them Mouschwicz, and they call the other one Duckau. And that's because the working conditions are so intolerably bad there. It is nothing but a cash squeeze. Get it out the door, minimum effort, maximum profit. And that's been going on for at least 40 years now, Mouschwicz and Duckau.
Wow. And that's that explains the Star Wars sequels.
The progressive left, especially in the movie industry and the entertainment industry, has always been critical of government officials, and by that I mean Republicans, for not speaking truth to power when it comes to oppressed people groups, for always wanting to be the ones that stand up for the little guy. They were always making movies about the little guy who gets a break, or the little guy who gets a chance at becoming great or overcomes some evil obstacle. And yet, in real life, they are showing themselves to be exactly the kinds of villains that they paint in their movies. What's truly ironic about this, I don't know if irony is the right word for it, I think irony died a few years ago, is that the communist critique of capitalism is that essentially it's a heartless system where people will do anything for money. Now, I know that this is not how they live their lives, but that's the official sort of communist critique, that they will do anything for money. And here we are watching Disney do with communists exactly what communists criticize companies like Disney for doing. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.